Thank you.
Just quick introductory remarks. You'll probably have seen some recent activity that were written basically in the Journal Star about reflecting on some disconnect processes and payment penalties and those types of things and payment processes. So we thought it'd actually be appropriate to brief you all up. There's an awful lot of what we do in that process. And so it'll take a little while to walk through it. We appreciate y'all being willing to give us some time to do that. But the credit practices actually obviously are a very important part of any business. But there's an awful lot of things that go on behind the scenes we thought that you all should be aware of. So with that, Lisa Hale, who's our Vice President for Customer Services, is going to do the presentation. So.
Thank you for having me. As you'll see on this presentation, the date on it is actually March 16th, which was last Friday. We gave this exact presentation to our administrative board, so we'll be walking through the same presentation that they saw last week. Left-handed mousing is definitely not my forte. So we are going to go with the down arrow. Okay, there we go. So, as you recall from the article that was in the Lincoln Journal Star, they were wondering why LES was not following the same cold weather rule that Black Hills Energy does here in Lincoln. And just to clarify, Black Hills Energy is governed by the Public Service Commission, and their cold weather rule requires, or is for a period of November 1st through March 31st of each year. And during this time, all customers are given an extra 30 days before disconnection. So just to clarify, they still do disconnects during that period of time. It's just that they give an extended period of 30 days during that 4-month period. Now, the ones that are exempted from that are low-income customers, and typically we think of those as customers that are receiving low-income home energy assistance funds. That program, I may refer to it as LIHEAP. Those are the funds that the federal government gives to each state, and then each state determines how those funds are administered. And in the state of Nebraska, that's done through DHHS. So just to give a little bit of perspective, in 2017, LES had a little over 3,600 customers who received LIHEAP funds. So I also wanted to note here that during that period of time, we have very few days when we actually complete residential disconnects. And as you can see, our policy up at the top there is that we do not do residential disconnects if the forecasted maximum temperature for a current day and the following day is below freezing or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. We also did some surveying of other local utilities, both in Lincoln as well as in the Omaha area and then in other parts of the state. And we found that 4 out of 5 surveyed have the same temperature guideline. This included 2 other electric utilities, 1 gas utility, and 1 gas and water utility. And then actually 1 electric utility still uses a 20-degree threshold for their disconnects. Okay, some other considerations that we take when we are actually doing disconnections that are also in the LES policy is we don't do residential disconnections on Fridays, and this doesn't matter if it's during the cold or the heat or whatever, it's year-round. We don't do residential disconnections on Fridays. And then we also don't do disconnections if the customer has an approved payment arrangement. And then in the summer, if there is a heat advisory for the current day and or the following day, we don't do disconnects at that time. And then this next topic is a big item for us. We use a lot of discretion when we do disconnects during the winter, and this is up to management's discretion. We have a lot of people that are very experienced in our customer services group, and so they use their discretion. Obviously, we don't disconnect typically the entire week of Christmas and New Year's holidays. Any other holidays during the year, we typically don't disconnect the day preceding, the day following, and then also any other type of inclement weather that doesn't necessarily fall within a temperature guideline. We also use discretion at that time. Feel free to jump in and ask questions if you have any questions at any point during.
I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you for the invitation.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for being here today. This has been definitely on my radar. I had a question about the policy of no residential disconnections if the customer has an approved payment arrangement. And the reports that I'm getting is that LES will only do a payment arrangement that includes payments every 2 weeks. And so what some of the folks that have been contacting me have been concerned about is they only get paid once a month. There's no way to pay what's behind and what they anticipate is coming forward the following month. And there's no way to pay every 2 weeks. And so when you have approved payment plans, are there ways that they can get payment plans other than every 2 weeks?
Yes, there is. Typically, we do try to do every 2 weeks just because, a good number of our customers, they are working, and so they're receiving a check typically every few weeks. And so it's actually more manageable for them if they can do a smaller payment every 2 weeks. But if we have someone who, maybe is on some type of fixed income that they only get paid once a month, we can work around that as well. They just have to communicate that to us, because the way we do start out, negotiating a payment arrangement is an every 2 week payment. So
Okay.
yes, we can work through that.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, moving on to reconnection after disconnection for non-payment. LES actually restores the same day if a customer pays the past due amount by 5 p.m. This is different than a lot of utilities. I know Kevin and I can speak for other utilities that we've come from. I've been at LES for 5 years, and prior to that, I was at another utility for 23 years. And I can tell you that the 5 p.m. disconnect or the reconnect cutoff time is actually much different than a lot of utilities that either, you have to contact them by noon or by 2 p.m. in order to guarantee a same-day reconnect. So I think that's something that LES does that is very customer friendly. Utilities, 53% of the customers are reconnected the same day, 15% are reconnected the next day, and then 3% of the customers are reconnected in 2 days. It may seem like that isn't a large percentage, but for those other accounts that are not reconnected after 2 days, there's usually an extenuating circumstance, and they're typically not reconnected for that same customer. They've moved on, and so the property is actually vacant, and we're not aware of that. So I would say that accounts for the largest number. But then there is also the situation where if an account has an extremely high balance, most assistance agencies can't or won't pay an extremely large bill. So what we usually see from assistance agencies is a payment of $500 or less. So if that customer has a bill that's much higher than that, they do have difficulty finding some type of assistance. And I'd like to also note that our fee is $65. We did a survey of other utilities in the area, and one utility does a $50 disconnect, $50 reconnect. One utility does a $75 reconnect. Another utility does $30 if it's done before noon, $100 if it's done after noon, and then another one is $80 or $180 if it's done after hours, and then another utility is $105. So I think that LES is very reasonable in terms of that charge. On to the topic that we were just discussing, our payment arrangements. We call these our promise to pay, so that's why I refer to this as P2P. LES allows customers to make multiple payment arrangements in a year. And again, this is much different than a lot of utilities. We have about 10% of our total customer base that make some sort of a payment arrangement at some point in time during the year. About 23% of our LIHEAP customers make a promise to pay at some time in the year. And both groups successfully complete about half of those promise to pays that are made. And then again, both groups, by the time that they either complete a payment arrangement well, obviously, if they complete a payment arrangement, they've paid 100%, but on average, we are able to get about 65% of the amount owed before a promise to pay is canceled. And then on average, customers make 4 promise to pays per year. Average amount for all customers is $133, which is that payment that we were talking about that they make periodically, whereas the LIHEAP customers, their average payment is $101. And again, the average time between payments is 13 days, and that we can work with customers on that. And I would like to note here as well that of our customers that receive a disconnect notice, 90% of our customers make some type of an arrangement or pay that bill before it actually goes to disconnect. So of those customers that receive disconnect notices, only 10% of them are ever actually disconnected. And then also, most utilities will limit the number of payment arrangements that they can actually make during a year. This also includes Black Hills Energy. They're allowed, I think, a maximum of 2 payment arrangements per year, one during the cold weather rule and then another one during the off seasons, so to speak. This is another thing I'd like to walk through with you to kind of show you how we are different than a gas utility. This chart demonstrates that for electric customers, we have, I wouldn't call them 2 large peaks, but we have one large peak during the summer, but then we also have a series of higher than normal bills during the winter months as well. So whereas at a gas utility where they have one peaking season, which is during the winter time, and then a period of below average bills where a customer can catch up, we don't have that same situation for an electric utility in this part of the country, because as you can see, I circled the 2 areas that are kind of our prime catch-up months for our customers, where their bill is actually lower than average. So we really try and work with our customers to keep those bills at a manageable amount throughout the year so that we aren't trying to pay a very, very large bill during those short windows of time. Okay, you also have a handout that gives a little bit more detail on this program, which is our Elias Energy Assistance Program. So I just will kind of hit some of the high points here on this slide. But this program was established in 2001. We do have Community Action Partnership administer this fund for us. When we started in 2001, the funding was set at 5 cents per month per residential customer for a total of $69,000. This is just the way we calculate it. And then in comparison, in 2018, our funding for the program is set at $313,181. This is a 354% increase in 17 years. Just to give a little context of how our community has been faring during a period of time since we've established this program. Between 2005 and 2015, poverty in Lancaster County has increased by 47%. That's the information that we've gotten from Community Action Partnership. During that same time, 2005 to 2015, our funding has increased 262%. And then just as another point of reference, during that same 10-year period of time, the number of disconnect notices that we've actually sent to customers has decreased 16.2%, which is a significant decrease. So our program is a little different than a lot of other utilities' energy assistance programs. We actually fund this through our rates. So we have a method of calculating it based on the number of customers that we have and any potential rate increases that we have, but we do build that amount into our rate structure. Most programs at other utilities are funded strictly through donations and therefore have a much lower amount that they have available to assist customers. We feel that this approach is the best as it helps to keep our write-off lower, we have a very good partnership with Community Action. They have a very holistic approach to how they handle this fund. They are the experts in this arena, and they actually do case management. So when a customer does apply for utility assistance, they will try and determine if there's any other needs that that customer may have, so that they can help with anything else that may be of an issue for that customer. I believe all of you were recently told about the My LNK app that was developed. I think Brian Seck was probably here to tell you about that. So that's another thing that we've actually recently instructed our CSRs about, and are really trying to do whatever we can to help connect customers with any type of assistance, whether it's, utility assistance or any other type of assistance available to help them. Okay, a couple other topics that are related to some of our policies and practices. The first one is security deposit. LES is also unique in the way that we bill security deposits. Most utilities will bill a security deposit at the time that the customer makes application, and unless a person is actually purchasing their home, if they are a renter, that usually guarantees that they're going to have to pay a deposit at another utility. So the fact that we don't bill a deposit at that time is definitely unique. We actually bill a security deposit at the time of disconnection for non-payment. So if, again, back to that, 90% of our customers that actually get a disconnect take care of that bill, and we work with them to get that bill resolved prior to an actual disconnection. But if we do have to bill a deposit, it is billed on the next month's bill, so it's not required to be paid before we will reconnect the service. And then if that customer calls in and needs to make any type of a payment arrangement on that deposit amount, we will also work with them to pay that in installments. Medical holds is another process. This one is actually is actually required by state statute, and it postpones residential disconnects by 30 days if a customer provides us with medical documentation that they have a need that requires them to continue to have service. This must be submitted within 5 days of receiving a disconnect notice, and information about this option that shows on the customer's bill. Again, this is another way that we have to help customers postpone having any type of a disconnect. And we are more lenient in the fact that if a customer offers us a medical hold, by statute, it's only supposed to be for that particular month that they provide that medical hold, but LES will actually hold on to that and keep that record for the entire 12-month period. So that customer would have benefit of having that extra 30 days for the entire year. And then we are not stringent with the 5 days. As long as they provide us with the documentation prior to any type of disconnection, we'll go ahead and honor that medical hold as well. All right. Next topic is the third-party notification. This one's also required by state statute, and this allows a customer to designate a third party to receive a copy of their bill if they receive a disconnect notice. This is ideally used for a customer who's vulnerable due to age or disability. And then the information about this option as well is on the LES bill. It should be noted, though, that the customer must be willing to sign someone up to have them receive that notice on their bill. And then budget billing is another optional service that we do offer customers, and we do push this towards customers who maybe do have a situation where they have limited funds from month to month. It actually allows them to pay the same amount each month, and so that they're able to budget a little bit better. And it is available only to residential customers, and we do recalculate this twice a year to avoid any significant fluctuations in the amount that they owe. Rate restructuring. I think Laura Kapuska's probably talked to you a little bit about the rate restructuring when she comes over to talk about the budget, but this is a process that we've been going through for 3 years now, I believe. And during the process of developing this rate transition, LES's low-income customers were definitely a primary focus for this. 75% of our LES low-income customers are in level 1, which is actually the lowest usage group for our customers, so they pay the lowest facilities charge. And we feel that by moving the fixed cost to the fixed charge, the variable energy charge is decreased, and this helps, again, smooth out the amount that customer is paying from month to month, so they don't have as much of a fluctuation. And then finally, we have a pilot project that we are doing through the Sustainable Energy Program. It's a multi-family direct install pilot, and we are working with a couple of apartment complexes where we are installing LED bulbs, low-flow faucet aerators, shower heads, and providing energy saving information. And this is going to be completed at the end of this year, and then after that, we will tweak it based on the results that we get and most likely roll that out so that we have an energy efficiency program available to those customers who are renters and are in multifamily dwellings. And finally, I would like to emphasize what I think is probably one of the most important things that we do at LES. I'm very proud to say that our LES employees are very active in the community. And it's evident by the amount of money that we provide to the United Way each year. And not only do we provide funding through our employee donations, but we also donate a lot of time and talent to a lot of nonprofit organizations throughout the community. I just mentioned a few of them that we sponsor corporately, such as United Way Day of Caring, Friendship Home, Homelessness Prevention Program, Junior Achievement, and Teammates. I would also like to note that LES is one of the first companies in Lincoln to host the poverty simulation for its employees. We had over 100 employees in all divisions of the company that participated in this, and I could go on and on about the number of outreach and volunteer efforts that our employees do on their own time to give back to the community in many ways. So with that is the end of my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Carl?
Yeah, I made notes as you went through, so thanks, Lisa. So the, you said 3,600 LIHEAP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jargon, I'm afraid.
Yeah. How do we determine that? How do you, I mean, you had a statistic in here about the number of people in the community who have, the increase, I guess, in poverty in our community. How do you figure that out?
So the increase in poverty that came from community action, and I'm actually going to pull that out because I don't trust my memory to quote it perfectly,
Okay.
but they actually do a lot of data gathering as part of their efforts, and I think that a lot of it's required because they are recipients of community services block grant funding.
Mm-hmm.
So their numbers in terms of the increase in poverty actually came from U.S. Census American Community Survey is their reference for that 47% increase in poverty in that 10-year time frame. As for your number of LIHEAP recipients, we don't determine how many customers actually receive that. That's done through Department of Health and Human Services. So they have a criteria, and actually if you go out on their website, DHHS's website, they will specifically say like what percent of the poverty guideline is the number that they will cut off in order to giving people LIHEAP funding.
Okay.
So then it just automatically comes to us as a part of their program.
And with that, with what DHHS does, and also with, you partner with community action partners and, or programs, is there case management that goes on with them looking at the, making sure that people aren't scamming the system or something, and that there's a genuine need there?
That's a really good point. Actually, community action and a number of the larger nonprofit organizations around the community use what they call as Service Point. And Service Point is kind of a centralized system. It's an access point that they can actually go in and determine whether or not customers have received assistance from other agencies. So to your point, they can see whether or not someone's received rent assistance or utility assistance or a food pantry or whatever. So it's a very nice tool for the nonprofits throughout the community to know, if someone's been underserved or vice versa.
Okay. John Camp's not here today, so I'm going to ask a lot of questions. Okay. Okay. So, boy, there's page 7. I had something.
I apologize. This presentation is so text heavy.
No, that's
But-
fine. So, yeah, okay, and this is kind of related to the statistics there. I saw that, the amount of increase or percentage increase that Elias has put in over 17 years. But then just below it, you have the poverty increase for 10 years. So maybe those numbers should be,
So
it's
I
apples
was trying to give a
yeah.
perspective of during the entire period of time that we've had the program, but I do have the same numbers. So between 2005 and 2015, poverty increased 47%. And then in that same time, LES's Energy Assistance Program has increased 262%.
Okay.
Just the lower bullet.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just the one right below it.
Okay, I see. All right. The page 10, the multifamily direct install pilot project.
Uh-huh.
That's for apartments?
Yes.
Have you ever done anything with mobile home parks? So I'm concerned about that. I hear from individuals there, and that's kind of the last stop for many families before homelessness. Those are terribly inefficient
They are.
structures, and has there ever been anything done? I don't know if anything can be done to help there.
So we haven't evaluated that yet. We do work regularly with referring customers, again, to community action, to their weatherization program. And that is an option for those customers that live in a mobile home. Sometimes, I think there's a lot of different scenarios where people that are in a mobile home are either, paying to renting to own, or, it's not as structured as an apartment complex where, you have one owner that is renting to multiple parties. We just really haven't evaluated that, and that's a good point. That's something that maybe we could look into if we do have success with our multifamily.
I think that your point is well taken. One of the things that we have a challenge with is trying to deal with non-owner occupied properties and trying to figure out, and that's actually why we're trying to do this program, to see if it makes a difference and we can do it that way. Because that's always been a challenge if it is an owner occupied.
Okay.
The nice thing about weatherization, though, is that program will actually, as long as the owner of the property agrees to participate in the program, that was something that I never was fully aware of, that weatherization is actually available to renters as well, as long as the owner of the property is willing to participate, so.
Okay, thanks. A couple more and I'll be done. Thank you. So when you're disconnected, you're charged a disconnection fee or a reconnection fee, or does it matter?
It doesn't, it has never come up with our customers as we are talking to them about it. It's actually called a disconnect fee, and we bill it at the, it shows up on the next month's bill. So when we are working with customers, that 90% that, we work with prior to them actually ever being disconnected, we have conversations, make sure you communicate with us if you're unable to keep this payment arrangement, because we don't want you to get into a situation where you're actually billed a disconnect fee or a deposit. So we're communicating all the way up to that point. But if a customer is actually disconnected, the next month they will see a disconnect fee on their bill. We are able to keep that fee somewhat lower because we charge it at the time of disconnection, because we do have that number of customers that aren't actually ever reconnected. So if we bill it at the time of reconnect, then we have a smaller number of customers to recover that cost over. And this is one of those fees that is actually just what it costs LES to perform that task.
Okay. Last question, if I
Okay.
could. And that's, tell us about the process of notifying customers when they are being
Can I
disconnected.
interrupt, because the question I have goes to your disconnect fee.
Okay.
But it also says LES bills a security deposit of $200 at the time of disconnection for non-payment.
Correct.
So that's in addition to the 65?
Yes. That's actually a security deposit that,
Right.
that we hold,
Right.
but that still is that customer's money.
Right.
So,
They're going to get a bill that says $265
Correct.
more than their usage.
But the unusual part of that for us is we will do it on a payment plan.
Mhm.
Both the disconnect fee as well as can be incorporated into that payment
Okay.
plan.
yep.
A lot of utilities require the security deposit and disconnection fee before they will actually restore service.
Okay.
And that, just to clarify too, Roy, Shelley had a good point, is that $200 deposit, once we hold a $200 deposit, we're not going to bill that deposit again. So if we have a customer that maybe gets disconnected twice and we're still holding that $200 deposit, we're not going to bill them a deposit again.
Now, Carl, does this,
I'm just following it, it's the same
Okay,
question?
same question.
Thank you. I guess I'm not exactly clear, the fee, the $65 is billed at disconnect or reconnect?
It shows up on the next month's bill, but it is triggered by the disconnect
So if
of service.
if they don't reconnect, does it become part of a permanent final bill for the
Yes.
person? So even though they don't reconnect, they still have that $65?
Because we still send a truck out to actually disconnect the service.
Thank you.
and you had something to do with the same thing?
Yes, and that was on slide number 7, it was a little confusing. So I get disconnected for whatever reason and build a disconnect fee and a deposit. I become a good customer for the next 12 years. Do I get that $200 deposit back at the end of my 12 years?
Actually, you would get it back before the end of the 12 years. Quite frankly, we don't have a lot of customers that get their deposit back at, they'll either move or, we apply it to their final bill or whatever. But, if you had good credit or good payment history for 12 months after that, you could call in and say, hey, I've shown that yep.
Can you
And we
apply
will.
that $200 to my bill?
Mhm. We can either apply it to your bill, or we can issue a refund if you didn't have a bill of that size.
Now it's back to Carl.
Yes.
Okay.
So, the disconnect notice process, could you
Mhm.
tell us about that?
Okay. So we issue a monthly bill every month, and if during the next month's cycle, we have a customer that has a past due balance of $20 or greater, they will be issued a disconnect notice. I actually may have. Here we go.
We've got it on the back of our packet.
Oh, do you?
disconnect
Okay.
notice, what they look like.
Okay, great. So then that disconnect notice will come out in a separate envelope. The envelope, by state statute, has to be marked so that a customer with some sort of identification, that they know then that it's important mail, so it will say important notice on it. This is the information that we show on that disconnect notice. It tells them where you can make a payment. It makes a clear statement that says that if a payment arrangement is necessary, they can call and make that payment arrangement. The back of the bill has a lot of information about those items that I talked to you about. And then if, for some reason, they're part of the 10% that don't call us or make a payment arrangement, then we will do the disconnect after the due date, anytime after the due date on the disconnect notice.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Benny?
I have two quick ones. Thank you guys for showing up and helping us with this, helping me better understand. On slide 5, you talked about cancellation of payment plan for promise to pay plan. And I wasn't sure if that's a cancellation because you didn't pay or a cancellation because you completed the payment process and you're back to normal.
So,
Explain what cancellation means.
so the 50% is a cancellation, like they didn't finish making their payments as they said that they were going to do that.
So I promised to pay.
And then you didn't.
I wasn't able to hold up my end of the bargain. I lose my opportunity to have a payment.
Not necessarily. If you call in and you've canceled or you've,
I'm sorry, I just can't make the next payment.
then if you call us, you will probably have to make some type of a payment in order to continue on. But you are able to make another payment arrangement. That's back to that whole thing that Elias is, we provide multiple payment arrangements in a year as opposed to saying, oh, you already did your one this year, you need to pay the bill in full.
And my other question had to do with the donations from slide 7. First off, you went to a new billing, online billing service, and I like that. I was able to no longer get a paper bill in the mail, even though I was paying online. Thank you for that. But there was an opportunity in the past to check a box and donate money, which I thought I was donating to this energy assistance program. Your slide suggests that that's not the case.
No, you are actually donating to Lincoln Cares.
And so,
On our bill, we collect voluntary donations. That's a longstanding relationship that we've had with the city of Lincoln to allow people to make a donation to the Lincoln Cares Fund.
and that goes for other assistance.
That goes to Aging Partners, the libraries, as well
Parks and
as
Rec.
Parks and Rec.
So the assistance that is paid to LES consumers comes from what fund?
It's out of our budget, which is, as Lisa said, is a pretty unusual way for a utility to do it. Usually the utility assistance funds are done, it's not unlike you're talking about the check the box or a roundup program,
Yeah.
some type like that, ends up being quite a bit smaller amount that you'd recover than what we use, but that's a common way that utilities do it, rather than just budgeting it directly. Now, that's kind of one of several things we do a lot differently, and we think is very proactive in trying to address the needs of the community.
Jane, then Cindy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Lisa, just real quick, I think you said 3,600 customers received funding from DHHS, but those are Lincoln Electric System customers, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Cindy?
Actually, mine was totally off topic, so never mind.
And I was going to tell Benny before I forgot that you can actually sign up if you want to start signing up for Lincoln Cares again. We'd be more than happy to get you signed up to do that.
I can circle the bill every month again, where is it? I know it's got to be here someplace, I just missed it.
Okay.
I would like to talk with you about that.
Okay, we can definitely do that.
Mary?
Thank you, guys. I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the Energy Assistance Program, and it's a little bit of a follow-up on Carl's question, I think. How does the program interface with those facing disconnect? Are you saying that you have customer service representatives who do case management and assess an amount that a person is eligible for? How does that happen? And then this follow-up question is, what is the utilization of this fund like? Does it fluctuate a lot? Does it stay steady at a certain amount? Do you run out?
So we leave the case management to the experts, which is Community Action. Their folks are very well versed in things that are available and helping customers with a lot of different challenges that they may be facing. So what we do is we refer our customers to Community Action Partnership. And then in terms of what they do, they will help people that they don't have to have been disconnected, but they have to have received a disconnect notice. The one nice thing about the funding that the Community Action has is there's not any hard and fast rules that, you have to be at 125% of the federal poverty guideline or whatever, because they know that things happen to people that may be just slightly above that or whatever. So we leave that to the experts, and every year they manage those funds. Fortunately, the funds take them through December, generally. I've been there for 5 years. I think there's only been 1 year where we've had the money gone before then, but, so it fluctuates based on, the bills that are out there during certain times of the year.
There is a continual dialogue between Community Action, however, and our customer service reps as well. They communicate, but they are the professionals in dealing with that. That's certainly not where our skill sets are. They've got really better tools to do that. There have been some cases, it's been a number of years, but we've actually tried doing other programs that we funded them to do that actually were for budgeting and different kinds of things like that. We had very kind of sporadic success with that in their determination of just trying to get people. We even offered childcare to try to help do that so that people could come in and get budget assistance and learn a little more. So there's been a variety of different things, but we do think that relationship with them is a valuable one because they do really know how to best deal with the community that needs that help.
One other thing besides the SharePoint that I had mentioned before in terms of determining how people are using services throughout the community is Community Action, as well as a number of the other assistance agencies that help with utility bills. They will contact us and ask us for customers' payment histories so that their philosophy is they want to help people, give them, help up. Instead of a handout. So they will be asking for, how many payments has a customer made, and not necessarily the amount, but maybe have they made their own payment a couple times during the year or whatever. So that's a lot of the communication that we have with those assistance agencies as well.
So who are the 10%? I know from the communication that council received, one person actually had received mail but had not opened it. So
Correct.
that was a clear kind of breakdown in communication. But who are the 10% who get disconnected? Like, what is their situation? And are those people who are referred to Community Action Partnership? Are they other people?
We really don't keep, or we don't have access to demographic information, but I think if you look at the demographics of who are the poor in the community, I think it would reflect then the same for our LES customers. I think they're working people that are trying to make ends meet, and for the most part are having some type of difficulty doing that.
I kind of meant more, where in the process are they? I mean, are they being referred to this and then something isn't able to be managed?
I see what you're saying.
Or are they not being referred to this process and they fail to comply with the
I would say it's a
plan?
mixture of a lot of different things. We have a lot of customers who are very good at communicating, and as long as they're talking to us, obviously, we have to have some reasonable arrangement. It can't be, I'll pay you $5 for the next 5 years or something like that. But again, that's where we can refer them to an assistance agency that can help them get through that situation. And I would say the majority of our customers are in that boat, as opposed to the customer that actually contacted the council that literally did not open their mail or have any communication with us prior to, reaching out to the city council or the Journal Star. I would say that's a minority. Did I answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I'm
apologize.
still wondering though, but if 10% do get disconnected, where did they go where were they in the flow of your procedures that they ended up with the closed door? Like what?
Well, I think as Lisa mentioned, a lot of times they have actually left those premises as well.
Okay.
So there's kind of a mixture of that. I would suspect virtually all of them have been using different kinds of assistance. I would think it'd be pretty rare that there wasn't one, or there was one that wasn't using some type of assistance out there, but had ran its course in some way or manner.
And is 10% of what total? What roughly?
It's
So
10%
the
of
30
the disconnect notices. that we
Yeah.
have.
Correct.
How
And
many
I'm
are
going
those
to
again?
pull out my statistics here.
Just to put it into context, I guess.
Yep. So on average, we issue, and these fluctuate each month depending upon the dollar amount of bills that are being issued, but we average 6,450 disconnect notices a month. So then if you take 10% of that, but again, winter months, we're doing very few, and I would.
You still put the notices out?
Yes, we still put the notices out. We still, on days that we aren't disconnecting, we still send our credit reps out to try and make contact with customers to prompt payment.
And it is possible those 65 are some of the same 65 over again?
Yes, oh yes. Mhm.
So it's, so 90% of the 6,450 are the ones that receive disconnect
But then they
notices,
pay.
but then make their payments
Yeah.
before it would happen.
Yes, so you said reasonable payments and $5 payments you mentioned, and so I will say that, of course, we live in a different day, because I remember a time where there was always too much month at the end of the money, and I did pay $5 a week to LES just to keep my services on.
Mhm.
I recognize in this, that the minimum wage wasn't as high then as it is now, but I did appreciate the utility working with me, and I do think, and I agree with you, that communication was the big key, so I appreciate you letting us even know this today because of some of the correspondence and contact we've had recently. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that Lisa mentioned is that she and I both have worked for the utilities, and I've worked actually utilities in 3 different states, including regulated and unregulated. I can honestly say I've never seen as liberal a policies as we actually deploy, or as many, and trying to find ways to make that work with customers. And I think it pays off. We really have fairly little problems in that area in trying to make sure we're helping customers, and I think that's a tribute to her staff, that they just do a great job. And as you experience, it's people trying to work and make things out. So. But we do appreciate you all taking the time to let us go through that. And if you have any real hard questions, you can call me.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, we have about 10 minutes before we ought to be back assembling here.
Thank you.
Yeah.